Welcome, everyone, to a cold, frigid campus, yet a beautiful kind of winter wonderland here at Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. Temperatures in the area were below zero with wind chill this morning when we came into work, and now they've risen up to the single digits, and you can see students outdoors. Braving the frozen tundra and walking from class to dining hall and all around and undeterred by the weather, while we administrators are sitting in our cozy, comfortable, warm offices, and I know some things still are just not right about the world. But it's my distinct pleasure today to interview our executive vice president and good friend, Shannon Cullinan. He's been in the role as EVP now at Notre Dame since July of 2019, so about a year and a half into the role, mostly consumed during that time with this COVID pandemic. Shannon oversees the university's operating budget of about $1.6 billion annually, and several units, 8 to my counting, distinct operating units on campus, from campus safety and operations to economic development, to facilities design and operations, to finance, to human resources, to the Office of Information Technology, to the investment offices, and university enterprises and events. It's a lot of work. That's why I saw him in the office last night as I was leaving at about 9 o'clock, and he was still plugging away as he typically does, working long hours, given that set of responsibilities, and especially under the circumstances that confront all of us. Shannon's a 1993 Notre Dame grad from Notre Dame. He majored in accountancy, went on a few years later to get his MBA at Wharton, at University of Pennsylvania. He served for 4 years as the Associate Executive Director of the South Bend Center for the Homeless, and did other, apparently working for a director who was a real jerk back in the day. But he survived that and did lots of other service work along the way. And he served in many leadership roles at the university in areas of public affairs and communications, in development. He was the vice president for finance, among other roles. And he and his absolutely beautiful wife, Sarah, class of 95, have 4 wonderful children, all in kind of high school, grade school age. First important question, Shannon, for you is, my understanding is one of your family members recently gifted you a Peloton bike, knowing that you're spending so many hours in that office. And, by my calculations that I come to visit you from time to time, it looks to me like the dust is collecting on that Peloton seat. So is it getting use or not?
It is getting used, Lou. I actually think you should come on down and use it. It was I have to say to my brother Sean, it was a very kind thing for him he sent the bike and he's paying for the subscription. So I better do the exercise. But Lou, we should actually flip this around. I think we should get, you've done such a good job that maybe I could interview you and Carmen at some point. It'd be great just to see how you're doing on many fronts.
We go to marital counseling on a regular basis, and no, I'm joking about that, in case it's very remote that Carmen would ever watch one of these interviews, so it's safe for me to, make flippant comments like that. But no, all is great on the home front. So no, seriously, the first question is, Shannon, you participate with other executive vice presidents, many from the top 20 universities across the country. And on a regular basis, you guys will share notes. Can you give us a sense of what you see that other select higher educational institutions are confronting? What are the similarities with what they're experiencing and we're experiencing here at Notre Dame? And what might be some of the things that make Notre Dame stand out as different?
Yeah, Lou, just the environment. We'd actually talk about higher education as an environment. what's going on in the sector quite a bit, not just the top privates, but what's going on with tuition dependent schools, right? Which we all have around us as institutions, and they're really important. It's tough, right? You went into this in a tough spot. Enrollment's really important. Enrollment's down, right? If you're tuition dependent, expenses are up, and the demographics are moving on you. So if you're a regional and the demographics are moving south into the west, you've got some compounding challenges that you're dealing with. And when enrollment moves, it's a 4-year deal. All right, it carries for 4 years, and so I would say there's shared concern for the tuition dependent schools. Some are doing fine, but we're concerned. And there's some publics in the group that I get to talk to every couple of weeks, and it's challenging. I just saw a data point put out by Pew that showed employment change from like February to October of last year. Those sectors where it was down, right? And number one was leisure and hospitality. I don't think that surprises anybody, but public higher education was number two at 14%. And we've talked about it, they educate over 70% of our college students. These land grant institutions and otherwise good public, they're fantastic. And there's concerns. Enrollment is down there too. Now to the top privates, and what do we try and do a pandemic and non-pandemic when we're on the call, because you could spend all your time on the pandemic. But I would say on the pandemic side, the unique thing we have at the moment amongst the top privates is we did this in the fall, right? We brought back nearly all of our students, and we did the contact tracing and the testing. And so we have a body of experience that we had through Thanksgiving. And then we could ask what worked, what didn't work, and our students told us, faculty and otherwise. And so we entered sort of the spring semester with just we've been a bit battle tested. Well, many of those are just bringing back the majority of their students. So they're just having what we had in the fall. And so there's, everything from, how do you manage quarantine and isolation, and how do you respond to positive cases at what point, and how do you have fun? How do you just create some fun? So they asked me about library lawn and how do we do that? We obviously can't do that in the middle of winter. We just did these really neat lodges on the quad. I sent out those pictures, and they're wondering how we pulled it off. I said I have somebody called Nikki Kidder, but it's a helpful group. I would say, the markets have been generous, which is so different, as you know, compared to 08-09, we're down 20% in the market, but we're all down in our income statement. Revenues are down, expenses are up, but by and large, I think that the top tier privates are doing fine, right? Their enrollments are fine and all of that. But you look to the next fiscal year, and you still have a set of challenges that lie ahead, particularly financially.
Is another way that we'd be distinct along these lines is those schools with a medical institution, have they suffered more, Shannon?
Yeah.
And if we've been hit, I know we've been hit hard economically, less so, about the same as our peers. How would we stack up on that front?
Yeah, certainly less so without the medical and the health system. I mean, they've done heroic work, and that, you're not getting your surgeries and some of those that have a higher margin, and you're really serving a lot of code. If you're in California in particular, it's challenging on that front. And some schools, the number and percentage of even international students is really high, right? So that has an impact. I think if you're USC, Lou, there's multiple challenges you're trying to address, right? You got a really international population. You've got a health system. You have an athletic department. So the headwinds are just, in some places, multiplied. And in the state of Indiana, in this county, we've had really good county health and state health in terms of being able to even be open. Some places you don't have the optionality, right? That's a difference.
So how are we doing so far this semester? I know that some of the cases have been on the rise on campus with the pandemic in particular.
Yeah.
From what we've learned last semester, what are we doing differently, and how are we managing? Are you happy with how we're out of the block so far, 2 weeks into the semester?
Yeah, the semester's different, right? You said it. We're at 7 degrees this morning, and so we've had to get really creative about what students can actually do. But as I say, the data, it'll surprise you, Lou, right? That at 6 a.m. every day I look at the data, and the data tells you a story. We brought students back, and we required testing on campus this time. For those, you couldn't get in your dorm if you're on campus until you took a test. But the positivity rate was 0.5%. It was really low. I mean, lower than what I would have guessed, and certainly lower than what we modeled coming out of it. But in the last 2 weeks, if you're looking at it, we're up at 1.5% on the positivity rate, which also doesn't surprise me at some level. You haven't seen your friend in 10 weeks. We had the Super Bowl, and people want to get together, right? It's best they can. And so we're seeing a bit of an uptake right now. But I'm just there. Our students have been really good. Not seeing a lot off campus at this point. I think the compact was helpful. I'm sure not all students love it, but the expectation is pretty clear for folks at this point. So we're a little elevated right now, and we may need to do some things here in the next couple of days. But overall, I think we've been through this, and there's a little more of a calm. I don't know about you, but it just seems like there's a little more. We have you sort of talking to all our off-campus folks, but yeah, a sense of calm. But even we're watching the numbers really closely, and right now they're higher than we want.
I think that's a good point. I do think we have a little muscle memory that might separate us from some of the other institutions that are just welcoming back their full student body,
Yeah.
this semester. And we know we've been through some rough patches, and it gives you confidence that you can get through, and you can make adjustments and rebound.
Yeah.
It's
The other
key.
thing we know, Lou, is there are a lot of asymptomatic. So 75% of them are asymptomatic at this point. No evidence of transmission in the classroom for a whole semester. That just helps bring it down a little bit. And our faculty are committed to teaching. They want to be in the classroom. So even with 10 inches of snow the other day, the K through 12 closed, but our teachers were here. Our faculty was here. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's a great point. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about testing and pandemic stuff in a little bit. But I have a bigger question I want to ask you about. And I imagine many people running different organizations, for that matter, even just running a family. The challenge seems to be that the day-to-day operations, managing the pandemic, the economic fallout, for higher education and Notre Dame, it can be all consuming. How do you create time and space to be thinking about the long-term planning for the university, to be able to in these times have a
Yeah.
bold vision for the future, and making sure that that work isn't just being relegated, or pushed back? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's an age old question, Lou, right? But when there's a pandemic, it just is. It's that much. It's been hard, right? That's just the truth. Any leader tells you otherwise. I'd love to chat with them, but I have a great team, right? So it gives you sort of. I enter this in a place of a veteran team that battle tested, really knows what they're doing. So on the operational side of things, support them and all of that. But I get to play in that strategy space, that sort of looking forward generally more often than most, just by virtue of a really, really incredible team. I mean, Doug and Mickey and Mike and Trent. I mean, these guys, they're fantastic. There's that. Um, but we talk about it a lot, and we talked about it pre-pandemic. And I push a lot on this. Are you managing or are you leading, right? And people have all sorts of theories about what that means. For me, it means, if you're managing, you're problem solving and reacting constantly, which
Hmm.
is what we've done over the last 12 months. Father John and Mary Lynn and myself have had to do a ton of it just to make. Once we said we were coming back in the fall, we were doing a ton of problem solving, reacting by the hour, on the day, 7 days a week, just to make it through, right? And leadership is, you're looking ahead, you're aspirational, you're seizing opportunities, all that. And I say the balance should be, you get up in that 60% range on leading, and maybe 40% on managing. Well, that's flipped to 90-10 at best in the last 12 months. For me, Thanksgiving helped, right? We get to Thanksgiving. It was sort of this get to Thanksgiving, and we could reset, and we could learn, and we could staff up more. So now when we have a surge, we know, there's things. And so I've felt it since Thanksgiving, an ability to sort of just lift my head up and look forward. And I now literally, Lou, when I sort of think about what I have to do, I have a management half of the page and I have a leadership side of the page, and try and be really intentional about it. But the other thing, I think we're fortunate, we're going to have to think about a strategic plan, because we just finished this incredible campaign thanks to a lot of people that are tuning in to this
Hmm.
Zoom call.
Hmm.
And so we're well positioned to come out of the pandemic and dream big about the future for Notre Dame. And, mission certainly helps. We know exactly who we are, but I think the timing's really good to be able to be looking ahead. So
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree with you. The timing has been propitious for us to complete a campaign and now hopefully by the summer to robustly take up a new strategic plan. And that process, I think, is timely. How has testing strategy changed, Shannon? From what we learned last semester, how are we doing things differently this semester? And I know that that falls under your purview, and Mike Seaman is the leader in that area. So, to tell us a little bit more, give us some more color about that.
yeah, it's a couple of things. One, I think we've been clear about expectation, Lou, right? You have kids here, the undergraduate, we're going to test you every week. So we're really clear about the expectation. And even more than every week, we have something called adaptive testing, where if we're seeing something in a dorm or a certain pocket, we're going to call you in more often than once a week. But it's a non-negotiable. You gotta do once a week testing, and faculty and staff every other week. And what we did is, we have the capacity to do it. And as you know, we have a saliva lab in McCourtney Hall. If Ted and Tracy are on the line, thank you so much. I was there yesterday with Father John, thanking that team. It's just incredible to sort of be, your own destiny in some ways. We can do 14,000 tests a week now through that saliva lab, and it's overnight, it's 24 hours, so you can get results that much faster. But you can do the volume that you need to do moving forward. And we still have all sorts of diagnostic tests, as you know, Lou, that if somebody's symptomatic, we've got rapid tests, and we've got anything you can pretty much think of that a hospital has, we have. So we're pretty well loaded up on that. But yeah, the ability to have your own lab. Michael Frender and Melissa, Michael Frender's the professor who put this together, right? I mean, so he's one of those heroes. So when they do write the history, I hope this humble faculty member's name gets in the books. He's a fine human being, and he's done Notre Dame given us an extraordinary gift in the saliva lab.
That's great. So, so we're testing a heck of a lot more at the beginning.
Yeah, think about it, Lou. It'll be just doing the math, 14,000 a week, at a minimum, probably 15,000 over 15, we'll be over 200,000 tests, well over 200,000 tests.
And how many did we do last semester?
Oh, we may have done 100,000.
Yeah. So more than doubling.
More than double. Yeah.
No, that's a great way. And as you said before, 75% of the students that are testing positive are asymptomatic, which means that we're getting at the virus early and able to isolate and then contact trace and quarantine those around them. So hopefully this is going to keep the spread down.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
It's mostly in small groups, Lou, right? I mean, you've been there. Let's say you've gone to the library and you're there for 5 hours. At some point, you want to just, take your mask off. And this virus it's tough. So I think students have been really good. I don't know. You're talking to the off-campus folks. I'm not hearing much about big gatherings and the like.
Yeah, no. Certainly, I think we're doing a terrific job with the off-campus students. As long as we continue to have sub-zero temperatures out there, I don't think we have to worry about any large gatherings. As you know, Shannon, I missed this interview last week with Aaron Hoffman Harding. I think it's the first one I missed since the pandemic started. And Greg Dugard, stepped in last minute because I was feeling ill, and I feel now like I'm the Wally Pipp of interviews. Greg came in and did a terrific job with Aaron, and I'm sure everybody wants to see him back right now, and so forth. But I had 3 tests last week for COVID, and as it is right now, if you feel ill at all, you've got to be conscious of everyone else, right? And the potential that you may be spreading something. And all 3 of my tests came back negative, but I went through the saliva and the PCR testing and so forth. And the regimen there is really thorough.
Right? I mean, I wish people could see the Joyce North Dome. We've basically taken over the entire thing, but we clocked it. It was one of the busiest class changes during the middle of the day. Somebody came in at the very end of the line, and it was 6 minutes, right, from the end of the line in and out. So the throughput's quite good. And kudos to that team there.
Yeah, the team has done a terrific job. Tell us a little bit about the vaccine. The vaccine is now on the top of everyone's mind, and there's been questions about what role will the university play eventually, potentially, in distributing the vaccine here and providing for, you know, of age, following the requirements, faculty, staff, and of course our students? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's the number one question I get at this point is the vaccine, and it represents so much hope for people. The first thing I'd say, Lou, is Marilyn and I every week we do a letter to all faculty and staff, as you know, and we sort of made a deal. I said, Marilyn, let's every week put something in there on the vaccine because people are just craving information, right? Let's tell them what we know, tell them the facts, right? We've built a whole page on the Here site that pertains to the vaccine because people are really wanting to know, right? When am I going to get this thing? And can I do this after the vaccine? So communicating is one. The other is a bit of a campaign. We are, we want to as many people as we can possibly get vaccinated that are Notre Dame faculty, staff, students, dependents. We want that's the goal. And so whatever we have to do to make that happen. So in Indiana, we had all the similar early eligibility, right, in terms of first responders and healthcare and all that. And as you know, Lou, now it's gone to age base. We're in the sort of 65 and above, and before too long, I think we'll get to 60 to 64. But we're being big advocates. So when that clicks and says, "Hey, 60 to 64 is eligible," anybody that's our employee is going to get an email from us saying, "You're eligible. Click this link. Here's all the sites. Go get it." Again, just to get as many as we can. So the second is we'd like to be we'd like to administer the vaccine on campus. So we are in discussions with the state of Indiana. I am hopeful, very hopeful about that. And we would do faculty, staff, students, dependents on our campus. And I think just we'll get more. And there's a trust level, even with frontline workers and others, that I think we'll get more people to actually do the vaccine. But the difference is you do the flu blitz around here. We do, I don't know, 18,000 flu tests, right, or flu vaccines. It might take us 4 days to do that, and we can order as much supply as we want. Well, this one, the question is going to be when is the supply and how much? I think we'll be open for months once we stand this up. And we're trying to get a sense from the state when that might be, but we're working hard on it, and they've been rigorous. You got to have all the freezers and things like that to make this work, but we're determined to get it done. And then the other is the information flow. The state requires a lot of information if you're going to stand up one of these sites, which we'll be fine. I'm not worried about that.
Is it your hope, Shannon? And this is, I know, unfair because it's trying to kind of guess at the future. Is it your hope that maybe the student population
Oh, I
could
would
be
love it.
vaccinated by?
As soon as they give us some sense of timeline,
Yeah,
um, it would be great, right? It would be on so many levels. It would be wonderful. If they say, well, you're going to get it in late April, and if we have to do two of these, it's not going to work. So we're pushing pretty hard. We'd love to. We would
yeah,
love to. It just depends. Yeah.
fantastic. So, in your role as the chief financial officer, for the university, you you're facing, and you already alluded to this, kind of an unprecedented situation. This is not like an economic downturn, and we've been through enough of those before. This is a case where we have had a significant decrease in some major revenue streams, and then we've had increased expenditures in areas like testing and all the tents and everything that we're doing to try to make life manageable for our students on campus. Um, Give us a sense of where we're at financially, and what is the impact in the short run, and what do you think are some of the long term implications for us?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. You've heard me say this, Lou. It's just the truth, and that is, we entered from a position of strength, certainly compared to our peers, and just a lot of vision, a lot of good governance by the board, really good governance, I would say, over decades, and flat out hard work. Right, we've got a really good finance team. I think best in the country. No,
Mhm.
nobody close. I really believe that. And so, that helps. In terms of governance, I'll just give you one example. And I think in 1990 we get our first AAA rating, right? And then it's sort of a mandate from there on from the board that you're going to maintain this AAA rating moving forward. And for those on Zoom, it's basically rating our debt, right? A bunch of financial ratios to do that, and it's the highest rating you can get. Well, there's only 8 large privates that have it. right? It's Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, Notre Dame, MIT, Rice, Columbia, right? And and when March hit, and the markets were down 10% in the month of March, people have short-term memories sometimes when they ask me about everything's back to normal, right? We wanted to go to the market for a couple of things. One, more working capital, which we had a couple hundred million in 46 days, right?
Hmm.
That's because you're AAA credit, right?
Hmm.
And then we wanted to play some offense financially. And so we issued some forward starting debt that we know we'll need, and we issued it at 1.1
Hmm.
and 1.3. 30-year bullets. The bullets just means principal's paid at the end, which is pretty incredible. Imagine a mortgage at 1.1, but that's
Hmm.
what the AAA credit gives you moving forward. And so we closed out last fiscal year with a little bit of a surplus. Student Emergency Relief Fund. Thank you. We did not have in the model how successful that was going to be. It was the difference maker. So the people on the call, thank you. And then in October, Lou, we went out with a number to the entire campus. We said, hey, we think our fiscal year 21, which for us is July to June, is going to be off 130 million. But we pretty much mitigated all of it at this point. And it's just some good sacrifices. No merit, right? We stopped the capital, the non-salary is way down. So it just good work by a lot of people. The last
And
thing I'd say
we've
is
been in a hiring freeze as well, right?
hiring freeze, staff hiring freeze, for sure. Stay humble and a bit paranoid would be mine. Because as you look out at the next fiscal year, we're modeling out 3 or 4 years, but you just don't know how things are going to come back. And that includes benefaction, Lou, but even, what happens to the bookstore and the horse and athletics, and you can model all you want. Sometimes it's a fool's errand until you know a little bit more. But
Yeah.
fiscal year 22 will be challenging again. We'll be fine overall. And the last thing I'll say is we haven't had to do layoffs and furloughs and benefit changes. And I'm deeply grateful. That sends a signal to this region in ways that it had a lot of conversations with local leaders about. Um, and these are our people, right? These are the Janitas of the world, and everybody else, Lou, that we know them really well. So I am grateful to sit in the seat and not have to do that.
Yeah. I really want to commend you and the team
No,
for sticking by our people in time of great difficulty. There have been people whose jobs have been altered dramatically. Many have not been able to come in. Many have stepped up to do even more because it takes more to clean the dorms than ever
yeah,
before. But you've stuck by our people to every person, and nobody's been furloughed or laid off. And
we
to date,
almost.
and we don't know what the future will hold, but kudos to you and the team for making our people a priority, because they're the ones who the future relies on. So thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about, just more broadly, like every organization out there, you've had to pivot. We've had to pivot as an institution on a lot of different fronts to adjust to these really unprecedented circumstances in our lifetimes. What do you see as some of the lasting changes that might come out of that? What have we
Yeah,
learned that we're going to be able to carry forward when things get back to normal?
yeah. Like everybody else, even on this call, remote work is going to be an interesting question for everybody to think about. The divisions I have, Lou, it's completely mixed. I've got people that, the Doug Marshes, the facilities, the dining and fire, police, um, that option's not there. They're going to be on campus, but then I've got HR and IT and the investment office, who really wants to be on campus, by the way, because they want that interaction. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out moving forward. Then on the student side of things, the library lawns and the use of the campus in a way, and bringing in food trucks, and we've sort of rediscovered some fun that I don't know why we would ever give that away. And then Mari Lynn and the Academy, I think there's a lot there, and it's for them to sort of think through. But and I think there's a lot more creativity about curricular, how you deliver it, but there's also affirmation that in-person teaching and learning is paramount. And the students told us, we did a survey, and they affirmed number one for them is the in-person. But we also did a winter term, right? And that, people can do a 3 credit class in 4 weeks. kind of worked. So what might you do in the summer that you haven't done before, where you might pick up some credits? I think people can think about study abroad differently. I'm the engineer that, well, I'm supposed to have my 2 required classes as a junior and this. Well, if it didn't have a lab, could you still go to Rome for the semester and then, get the online dual delivery, things like that. So I think people's imaginations have really have really been opened by the possibility. But in-person teaching is still, I think, number one for us. Yeah.
Well, that's a great way to frame it, because in some ways the pandemic has become a crucible in which a lot of by necessity, innovation and creativity has been forged, and I think it's going to be really critical for us as an institution to carry forward the good.
Yeah.
And you pointed out a lot of those examples, and there's many more out there that can transform life for our students and the way we manage a university going forward. But one thing we have learned across the board, and I think you've said it many times, the success that we've had in bringing basically the full student body back for in-person classes, the residential experience, for all the work the administration and our terrific teams have done, staff and faculty across the board, the reason why we made it is, to your point, it's because students really wanted to be here.
Yep.
They did not want to be home. They did not want remote classes. Most of their peers, their friends that grew up, have been remote, and they know how privileged the experience has been to be here. And we've made it this far because they've wanted it desperately to work.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about kind of a broader theme, and this certainly predates the pandemic, an issue where especially the select private higher educational institutions have taken some real hits in the court of public opinion. There's even been some legislative movements that have been damaging to us and other institutions. For example, the endowment tax on the top 30 private institutions with largest endowments from the federal government, and there's this perception out there that select higher ed has gotten too wealthy, is too out of touch, and we're going to come out of this pandemic, and we're going to see a greater gap between the rich and the poor, and a greater separation along educational lines, private and public educational systems over the last couple of years. Probably it will be. How do you think Notre Dame is positioned to respond to those challenges and those criticisms?
Yeah, there's a lot in that one, Lou. We could spend an hour just on that
Yeah.
topic. It's I'll hit the endowment one first. The tax that one gets me going a little bit, because now you're not only seeing the tax on the endowment, you're seeing in other pieces of legislation. Even the stimulus that's going through now is saying, well, if you're one of these endowment tax schools, then you would actually get less. And in the end, we're not going to accept it anyway. But it's a slippery slope, and I'm concerned about it, right? And if it moves from 1.4%, what can it move to? And do you really want to take that away from financial aid? It just doesn't make sense. But I won't spend too much time on that. I'd say, as far as the impact of, let's say, these top privates, this, Lou, between First Pell and between Pell and First Gen, we're trying to increase that number here at Notre Dame, which could be transformative in the lives of those folks. And on the research side, I say all the time, like, can't tell me the Lab for Economic Opportunity isn't really important. The work that's being done there is about which poverty programs work and don't work, right? Or what Marcus Cole and others are doing on religious liberty. This is really important work. So I said to our federal relations team all the time, I said, you know what you should do? Just keep sending our students to DC. I said, so they can actually see the leadership that's in these students, not going to be leaders. They're already leaders. And so anyway, some of that frustrates me. I think there's just an extraordinary amount of good work that's going on in these institutions that it just doesn't make it in the press, and that's unfortunate. That's on us too. We got to do more to tell our story.
And just one thing hasn't changed: the impact on a person's life from getting a degree of higher education.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely is. It still seems to be the most transformative vehicle for somebody to be able to have a greater impact on this world and to be able to support their family and
Yep.
in causes that they believe
Yep.
in. Yeah. So good stuff. I got just a couple closing questions here, Shannon. One is, you know, some people around here will say that, as we're tested by the challenges of the times, that right now we are laying the foundation for the next great chapter in the development of Notre Dame and her mission to be of great service to the world. Um, what have you learned during this past year in the pandemic that gives you hope about the role that Notre Dame can play going forward in the future?
Um, Another one we could spend a lot of time on. Thank you. The one you've heard me say this. The culture here at Notre Dame. This is why I get a little concerned about remote work. Right? Is the other side of that is I think the past 12 months is sort of a case study for how important it is and how much hope it can bring you on any given day. I remember the day when we had the 100 cases and it was August, right? We're just getting started. And Mike Sieben comes into my office. We're looking at the data and boom, it hits 100. And and I just said, Mike, I said, all right, you and I, we got to go to every team now. All right, the contact tracing, the testing, they're all going to be looking at us for exactly what you talk about. And that's a little bit of hope. And I said, Mike, we're going to make a bet. We don't even know the answer to it right now, but we're going to go in there and we're going to tell people that the cavalry is coming because that's what Notre Dame does. And we are going to load up with more people and take care of it. And we are getting through this semester. And so, of course, I went in there and gave the speech, and Mike had to actually explain how. And then we called people like you, and I said, Lou, I need 40 people, and I need them now. And it was transformative, right? But culture is a big deal, and it's been built over decades here, right? Give Holy Cross a ton of credit for what's been built here.
Mm-hmm.
It is paramount, right? And so that gives me hope for the future. But hang on to it, pay attention to it, protect it, grow it. It can move on you just as fast in many ways. So the other thing that gives me hope is our mission. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Mission's a big reason we got through this last year, and it'll carry us into the future. And deliver an unsurpassed undergraduate education. Well, when your faculty line up and you do 85% of your classes in person, right? You're moving with your feet in terms of supporting that mission. When not everybody did
Yeah.
moving forward, right? And I love you. You have a great line Lou, that I've never forgotten, and it's not it's not that we're holier than. I think you say better than, right?
Yeah.
But we are distinct, right? And in these tough times, it'll carry you. So the last I'd say is, um, leadership matters, right? And there's a lot of attention paid to it here, and certainly at the board level, there's a lot of attention paid to it. Um, I'm sure glad we had a veteran priest president during this particular time.
Mm-hmm.
Steady hand, been battle tested many times before, but you know, um, I just that's a difference maker. I've learned more about leadership in the last 12 months than I might have in the last 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can raise the bar for people and they'll meet it. And there's a reason they're going to, work 7 days a week. The little things matter too, Lou, as you know, they really matter. The
Yeah.
phone call, the thank you, the small note that you show up at the testing site, right? Went to the lab yesterday just to say thank you to those folks. That matters moving forward. So again, the other thing I'd say is just it gives me great hope to see our people every day. That you need just to walk in here and give us everything they've got. I think we're in a good spot and really fortunate. So sorry for a long-winded
No, that's
answer.
so many great insights there, Shannon. I've often thought about Father John and his leadership, and the 16 Holy Cross priests that preceded him as priest presidents, and I think how different the calling, the vocation of the priesthood makes them as CEOs or presidents or leaders, and that you and I, we've both been, and many others have, on a day with Father John where you fly out in the morning early in the morning to the East Coast, where he presides over a very emotional, heart-wrenching funeral. And then we fly back to campus, and later that same day, in that early afternoon, he presides over another funeral and is interfacing with family members who are grieving, and this is a huge moment in their lives. And then we sit in a meeting to talk about some university decisions that otherwise would seem like the weight of the world is riding on your shoulders, but there's a depth of perspective, and that Father John and the other priest presidents before him have been able to bring to those deliberations that makes Notre Dame a distinct place, and makes for distinct leadership, and
Yeah.
you embody that exceptionally
No,
well.
and Lou, I talk all the time about being humble, being hungry, but this and being hopeful. And with Holy Cross, they speak of hope often. They live by it, right? And for our staff in particular, you're a frontline staff member here, and they measure your hope in your action. And so when you don't do layoffs and you don't do the furloughs, and their family members are getting that,
Yeah,
right? It brings hope to a really challenging time. I'd say the same is true of our students, right? They're very hopeful. They had to fight the good fight with us in the fall all
yeah,
the way along and keep the hope that we could actually make it. And so of those three, the hope piece, I probably underestimated how often we needed to be talking about it, how often we needed to demonstrate it. And Holy Cross is a gift in that way.
yeah. Well, and so are you, and we're both really lucky to be here, to be able to serve this mission, and with such an incredible team, and under a great leader in Father John, and with so many amazing supporters who believe in the mission, and its role and impact on the world. Before we close, Shannon, any parting shots, any words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, the only thing no parting shots, just a message of gratitude to all the people that are out there watching this. A lot of you have written to me. Um, a lot of you I've called, the Jacks and the Flahertys and the Harrises, hundreds of calls. I love what I do. I'm deeply grateful for it. But to all the people out there that have been supporting us through this, whether it was a text or an email or whatever, in particular Holy Cross, nobody has communicated with me more than the Holy Cross priests on this campus in the last 12 months. No group, not even close. And so to them, I'm grateful.
Thank you, buddy. Your three themes: hunger, hopeful, being hungry, hopeful, and I'm sorry, hungry, humble, and hopeful are great themes for us to live by as a university, and in our personal and collective lives beyond. Thanks again, Shannon.
Thank you.
Our prayers are with you and your leadership as we move forward. We want to invite everybody to join us again next week on Wednesday, same time at noon Eastern Standard Time. Professor Luis Fraga is going to join us. He is the Father Don McNeil CSE Professor of Transformative Latino Leadership, and he is also the Director of the Institute for Latino Studies here at Notre Dame. And as we always do, let's close this session with a prayer to our patroness, Our Lady, the Mother of God, Notre Dame. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us.
Sinners, now and at
Pray
the hour
for
of
us
our death.
sinners. Yeah, keep going. Pray
Sinners,
for
pray
us
for us
sinners,
now at the hour of our death.
now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Oh my God, I've been doing this for a year, and it was the first time I stumbled on the prayer. My apologies to everyone out there. Thank you all for joining us. Take care. God bless. Go Irish.
Go
Stay
Irish.
safe.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Lou.
Shannon.
Thanks, everybody.